So hi, and this video is just going to be about how to prepare for MTech VLSI and VLSI related interviews in for top IITs and IISC. Now, I am personally from IISC MTech MVLSI, so yes, my advice might be a bit biased, but to be honest, it will work for most of the major interviews, be it IIT Delhi VDTT or be it IIT Madras, MTech Research for Texas Instruments, which is Texas Instruments sponsored, and even for MTech research programs. And if you do this right now, since gate is over till the time your interviews commence, you will be in you will be in quite a lot of advantage. Also, if you have your aim that I have to do MTech and VLSI related role only. For example, if you are getting, if you are planning for ISC, MVLSI, and if you are not able to get it for some reason and you have to like go with electronic system engineering or EPD, that is also fine because even if you do some other specialization, but from there's a route that you can make a VLSI profile, that is also not that big of a problem because you, if you have the knowledge in the end, you will always make it. Yes, a better branch has its benefits, yes, because your curriculum will be more VLSI oriented, and companies sometimes prefer branches which are specifically VLSI only. But in the long run, that won't matter much, right? So what I mean to say here is, although I should not be mentioning it right now, like there are companies sometimes come in campus placement and they say that we only will recruit people who are from VLSI specialization. We won't take people who are from some other specialization, despite the fact that they have the VLSI knowledge. That happens sometimes, but it does not happen every time. So even if you're not getting MVLSI or ICS in the IIT, you can settle with some lower branch. And if you really have interest in VLSI, you can get the knowledge in that, and you can still try on campus or even off campus because you already have the tag of a great institute. That being mentioned, now this video I'll just specifically tell about VLSI related MTech streams, that how to prepare for VLSI related MTech interviews and even MTech research interviews. So the first question to address here is that what is actually asked. So what they basically ask you is they basically test you on your gate basics only. What they try to assess is that do you really understand what you have studied so far in your gate journey, because the mindset most of the students have is that we can just memorize this formula and we'll be done with it. But the thing here is that especially in the subjects like analog or digital and your devices. I'm talking about gate EC point of view. For electrical, you can place a pump in power system or all those subjects here. And devices, or be it your networks or be it your control. So the question here, what lies is that do you really understand that why certain formulas were here to begin with? For example, in analog electronics, people just memorize in gate that we are using degeneration, so gain will decrease. But the question is that why did we do that to begin with? So this is a small example. So they really test you on these basics, that do you know the whys of the things, right? So I'll just first go through the content that you need to be thorough with, and then I'll just give you some interview time advice also that you can follow. Now, what is the content? Typically for ISC, I'll just talk about institute wise. So typically for ISC, when you are appearing for MTech or MTech research interview for VLSI related role, typically the professors ask you that what are you good at? Are you good at analog? Are you good at digital? Are you good at devices? So sometimes it happens, sometimes it does not happen. But still, it is advisable that what the subjects that I have written here, you are at least good with these subjects. If you are appearing for VLSI related interviews, you should be good with these subjects. So my point here is that at least your gate level basics must be strong. But apart from that, in fact, it is not only applying to IISc, it is applying to for other institutes also like IIT Madras or IIT Bombay, if you are and even for IIT Delhi. Okay. I'm specifically talking about interviews here only, but if you are doing this, it will work for interviews in all other NIT IIT MTech research programs also. So yeah, so for the first prerequisite is that your gate basics must be thorough for the subjects, and since you have already prepared for gate, the only thing now that when you are revising that you must now think about is the whys, right? as much as you can think about the whys. For example, that why does saturation happen in a MOSFET? That happens because of pinch off. Okay, but where is pinch off happening inside the MOSFET? So these are the kind of questions you should be asking yourself, right? Okay. Now, second is that you can be doing, since you have a lot of time, is there are many YouTube NPTEL resources out there available online. Before I mention this, I should mention one more thing is that when you are doing VLSI related, when you are making VLSI, doing VLSI related program, there are typically three lines people work on. One is analog VLSI, then there is digital VLSI, and then there is devices, right? So these are the three broad categories in which you can make your career. And most of the time, people go for digital because it has more jobs and it is easier to get jobs comparatively here because the jobs are more. And the preparation is also, in my opinion, it's not that hard as compared to devices and analog. But if you have interest in analog, and the jobs are also less in analog and even less in devices, at least in India. But if you have interest, you can like, it's not necessary to make your mind right now that in which profile you want to go, because let's be honest, gate syllabus is just a scratch of the surface as of what you will be actually be studying in all these three domains. So yeah, when you by the time you join your MTech and you complete your first semester, you can make your mind that what profile you want to go with. So I think now it's in order that I just mention the YouTube resources, the NPTEL resources rather, that you can watch so that your interviews go great. And trust me, if you do this, you will basically be unbeatable at your interview. So let us go to resource one straight away. That is for digital electronics. This is the resource you can follow. Since I'm sharing my entire screen, I'll just search that parallelly on YouTube, so that you don't say that we can't search this particular guy. So I'll just search it right here. So it is uh, Janki Raman, uh, digital IC design. So this is the resource one that you can follow, and it has 81 videos. So now some people might be panicking that, oh my God, do we need to watch these 81 videos? No, need to watch these 81 videos. So what you actually need to do here is that this playlist has 81 videos, yes, but you don't need to watch all of this, okay? What you need to be watching here is, see, first of all, in the starting of this playlist, they are teaching you about short channel effects on MOSFET, which many people don't study for gate, but it is very much relevant in interviews because they ask you that where does the output resistance of transistor come into picture in uh, saturation. So basically, all these basics will be cleared. And since it is a digital playlist, so it's not supposed to be a device playlist, but still, even if you do watch this, you will be in a very good position to answer interview questions. So here, what you can do is you can study at least, if you have the time, at least study till video number 19, okay? At least study till video number 19. And if you, even noise margin is important. So what you can do is, at least try to study till video number 24. Yes. So at least try to study till video number 24, although inverter is also important. So I'll say that you can go all the way till video number 31 if you can. So I'll just write it somewhere. So the playlist was Digital IC Design by Professor Janki Raman sir. And why I'm asking you to watch this is because in interviews, the content that they typically ask you, they can ask you on short channel effects. Then the popular questions that are, they can also ask you, they most of the time they ask you on CMOS inverter. And in CMOS inverter, they'll ask you all these possible questions that what is trip point, what is the need of CMOS inverter, what will happen, like people won't be knowing what a CMOS inverter is, then I'll just draw it. It's just a PMOS whose gate is connected to the gate of an NMOS. And basically what this guy does is that if you supply a V in here and you're taking V out here, its output characteristic is something like this, that if this is a V out, this is a V in. So in this region, it is acting as an inverter. Here you can use it as an amplifier, right? So basically they ask you about this CMOS inverter. They ask you about various questions that why do we use it? What will happen if I connect an NMOS at top? And now if I'm having this guy, so now what will my output look like? They ask you all these various questions. Or if I swap the PMOS from NMOS, if my NMOS is at top and PMOS is at bottom, then what will happen? So all these various questions they ask you, and you will be able to answer all these questions if you just watch this Professor Janakiraman sir's Digital IC Design playlist. And I'll suggest that at least watch till he covers the topic of CMOS inverter, which is around lecture number 24. But if you can go all the way till lecture number 30, then you can stop when he starts with ring oscillators, all that. And yeah, so if you watch this playlist this much, I think you are in very good position to answer questions. And apart from that, you are already revising your gate digital notes, so you are good to go there also. And as I mentioned before also, that you should prioritize knowing the whys of everything. So in digital also they can ask you the whys of things. So you just should be good with that, okay? And then that is the playlist one that you can refer to. This was the playlist one. The playlist two that you can refer to now is Razavi, Behzad Razavi, Analog Electronics. There are two playlists, so you can just watch analog electronics one, and if you have the time you can watch analog electronics two also. Because see, some MTech interviews start around April time, but MTech research interviews, I believe, even winter admissions happen, so they can happen very late. So you tentatively can even have a year long time in worst case. Worst case I'm saying because people typically want to do MTech as the first preference, right? So if you want to do MTech, you have like 3 times to prepare all this, which is, to be honest, more than enough. And if you're doing MTech research and or if you're going for winter admission, you have a year-long time. So you can definitely watch all these resources. So yeah, so I'll just search it out here. So for analog electronics, if you have interest in analog, so these are the kind of this playlist will basically clear your fundamentals that people typically people ignore in gate. People don't really think why stuff is happening. So basically this playlist will help you with that. So see here you can see that he's a great professor, Behzad Razavi sir. So I'll basically recommend you that you basically if you can, and if you're interested in analog, I'll just recommend to go through this entire playlist. But what if you don't want to make an analog profile and you're only concerned with like clearing your interview? Then I will say that you can skip this playlist. But if you want to make an analog profile, and then recommend that you can watch this playlist, because this will just clear your fundamentals. Otherwise, still for interview point of view, I will recommend that you at least cover you can basically cover the top, I'll say. You can at least cover emitter follower, transconductors, large signal, and biasing techniques. To be honest, this playlist is important because it is clearly clearing your major fundamentals. So I'll say that for analog electronics, not only for analog electronics, but even for your interview sake, I will recommend to finish this playlist. In my opinion, you should do, although it is you will find it hectic if you have only 2 months. But let's be realistic. If you only watch 2 videos per day, you are good to go, right? And still, you keep it this in second priority. First, just revise your gate analog electronics syllabus, and if you are confident with that and you can explain whys and whats, then you can skip this watching this playlist in worst case. But at least watch this digital IC design playlist by Janaki Raman sir, and at least try to cover the first 24 to 30 videos. Okay. Once you are done with these two, you have basically covered this 70 or 80% of the stuff they can ask you in interviews. And then the third thing that you can be watching is that you can consider watching some NPTEL device related, electronic device related playlist. Okay. If you have time in hand, or even if not that, you can just revise your gate EDC or device notes and just try to know the whats and whys of everything. Okay. So this is the content that you should typically cover. If you want to know the playlist, that if you have time, you want to know the playlist that you can be watching, that playlist can be uh, There are two options for personally for even for gate. I prepared from here electronic devices or like electronic devices NPTL, and they basically this is the playlist by Digvijoy Nath sir, where he beautifully explains and in very detail he explains to you the devices, and you can actually watch the starting. You can watch the I guess you can watch the starting 38 videos because compound semiconductor no one will ask you, but you can watch the starting 38 videos of this playlist. So I'll attach the link to all these playlists in my description. So and I'll attach them in the order of preference. So you can consider going through this playlist. So this will basically strengthen your fundamentals and devices, and sometimes they can ask you in interviews, but now I'll just come to the main point that how to tackle the interviews. Okay, so this was the content that you can broadly cover. First, your gate syllabus basics must be solid, and then you can consider going through these basics, and especially if you are just appearing for VLSI related role. But now for interview, what they can ask you, they basically, if you have done some BTech project, like in your final year, they can ask you on your BTech project. Okay. And now there is nothing to panic here. Most of the people don't have a great BTech project. Even I did not have a great BTech project. So if they ask you about your BTech project, you can just straight away mention that it is not related to VLSI, or it is not related to the interview I'm preparing for. It is about this topic, but I would love, I would love if you ask me questions on analog electronics or all that. You can mold the interview in your favor. Okay, so it basically applies in every interview, that you should be able to mold the interview in your favor. That if they are going in a direction in which you are not confident, you don't know anything about that, you can always, in a positive way, just convince the interview to ask you in these. In some other topics, for example, if I'm not good with my BTech project, I can say that, sir, I have my BTech project was not is not that great, since my BTech college is not that great, but my fundamentals on the subject of the on analog electronics or digital electronics are fine. So please ask me questions from here so that I can prove you my knowledge. All these by saying all this, you can basically convince the interview to ask questions from other topics, right? So they ask you questions on project. Some people find this advantageous also, because many people have some people even do some advanced projects in their BTech. Like some people do risk processor design, all that. So there, if you are asked, you have done some good project in your BTech which is related to VLSI, your entire interview can go on your BTech project only. But you should never ever try to bluff the interviewer, because professors are very much learned, and if you have done some scam in your BTech, they will easily detect that, and your entire interview will get spoiled. Despite the fact that you had the knowledge in your gate, but since you tried to advertise something which you did not know, your interview will go wrong. Okay, so remember this part. Then what they typically ask you is they ask you questions from CMOS. I'll say that CMOS inverter is a very important topic, so prepare this well. Okay, prepare that how it inverts the signal, in what regions of operation it works, and when it will be useful for amplification, when it will be useful for inversion. Just study this thoroughly well. Another important topic that there is the MOSFET and the MOSFET device physics. Okay, so basically it's device physics, and from device physics I mean that how from MOS capacitor level, like from MOS cap level, to basically how inversion happens, how accumulation happens. You should preferably, if you can explain band diagrams also, that is also good. Okay, so you should be able to explain all that, and then you should be able to explain the current equations of MOSFET, that how they come into picture. It's quite standard. It's just the basically gradual channel approximation model. You can explain that. Just study the stuff that I have told you. And if you are now panicking that you have given your digital playlist and how will you study CMOS inverter, the first 24 to 30 videos of this playlist are about CMOS inverter only, and about short channel effects of MOSFET only. So that's why I was saying to cover that playlist. Okay, and then sometimes professor asks you that whether you want questions on digital device or analog. So if you they ask you questions from analog, they only ask you from device basics only. Then they also ask you some basic questions from signals, like explain to me what convolution is, all that. Or they ask you some basic questions on control theory, that like just explain to them what Barroso criteria is, what is negative feedback, what is positive feedback, the differences there. So here for signals and control, your gate basics should be good enough, and even for networks, okay, network theory. So this is the basic content for interview. And here the what is advisable is that when you are answering questions, speak your thought process, okay? Speak your thought process. The thing is that, for example, if they ask you a question upon how current flows in a MOSFET in saturation. Okay, so speak your thought process. Like for example, even if your basics are not that great on the day of interview, which should not be the case, please study. But even if you're finding that this you're shaky on a particular question, just try to speak your thought process. That even if you're confused, try to speak it. For example, that you're saying, okay, there is a voltage between drain to source, so that means there is some electric field in the channel laterally. Because of this electric field, my carriers will get drift, will experience a drift. But if I increase this electric field too much, what will happen is that depletion region will come at drain and source. And if I'm increasing my gate voltage, what will happen is that okay, so like this, you can like speak your thought process. Getting my point? So the interviewer will realize that this guy can think, because what they are basically assessing is they're assessing your thought process. Okay, they don't expect that you are answering everything with 100% accuracy, but you should be able to convince the interviewer that you can think. That's the ability that you need to convince the interviewer of. Okay, so try to speak your thought process always, because I've seen that double digit rankers are also rejected from interviews, and triple digit rankers are selected in top branches, because the double digit ranker cannot convince the interviewer of their thought process. So the point is, don't get silent. Okay, so in the interview, just don't get silent if you don't know the answer to a particular question. Just say that, sir, try to, don't even say that I can't do this. Try to think about it. Try to display your thinking on board or paper, and then say that, sir, this is the best I can think of at the moment, but you can ask me questions on this because I prepared this well, all that. Okay, but speak your thought process. Try to think in a logical way, and try to convince the interviewer that you are able to think in all these directions. Okay, so that's what, because I'll give you just an example. Some of my friends were asked questions on topics that which they teach in MTech second or down late in first semester. Okay, so you can't, if you are just studied for it, you can't know the answer to such kind of questions, right? Because my friend was asked about the lateral and the vertical MOSFET band diagrams, okay, which people study in their MTech, okay, late semester. So typically he just went mum at that question. That's why his selection did not happen. But if you would have just had said that, okay, just even try to attempt that question on board, okay, to the best of your thinking ability, and try to speak out your reasoning. Even if your answer would have been wrong, your selection could have had happened, right? So that's the main thing, and this is the most important takeaway of this video. Speak out your thought process. Don't get silent or entirely afraid by a question that you don't know, and try to mold the interview in your direction. And these were the resources that I mentioned. And so, and the basic preliminaries, that just hammer down your gate basics. That is very much important for MTech research, or for any interview that you can think of. Okay, now that I have covered all this, I should also now, on a side note, I'll just also mention for IIT Madras MTech research program, which is sponsored by TI. What you do is you should do Razavi Electronics 1 and 2 playlist that I just showed on YouTube. They are indispensable for you. And also what you can study now is Shanti Pawan Sir's analog electronics playlist, which is again NPTEL playlist available. Because if you are appearing for MTech research interview, you will have quite amount of time for, like, I think 3 to 4 to 5 months amount of time from now. And before that, you just study Symbian T Sir's passive circuits. Okay, at least try to cover first order RC circuits. Okay, just try to cover this. Okay, and if you're doing this, your selection is 100% if you are studying this resource properly. This is specifically for people who are appearing for MTech research program for analog profile. Why I'm biased towards analog is because I myself am preparing an analog profile. But before this, what I told you, this is common for all MTech VLSI related interviews. Okay, your these basics must be great. Now, if you are appearing for EAC, electronic system engineering specialization, there you can be asked questions like. There you can be asked questions related to microcontroller, all that, but they are just your BTech basic questions only. So you don't need to be stunned or anything of that sort there. And again, in the end, if you don't know answer to a particular question, you would always try to mold the interview in the direction you prefer. Because every time interview can ask some question that is just to test how you react to something that you don't know. Okay. And it is just to also test your presence of mind. But if you study these resources, fundamentally your interview will basically get cleared, because this is just the basic preliminary knowledge required to clear your interview. That being said, all the best for your endeavors, and I think, yeah, that's all for this video. All the best, prepare well, and hopefully by end of 4 5 months or by end of this year, you will be in the place you desire to be. Okay, thanks.